So let's call the meeting to order and proceed. The first item of business is the approval of the agenda. Everyone has received a copy of it. Could I ask for a motion to approve the agenda? Jacqueline, Councillor Holland, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That one is carried. Confirmation of the minutes. We have a couple of minutes, sets of minutes to do. Let's move to the first one, which was the July 8th meeting of the committee. Again, everyone has received a copy. Could I entertain a motion? Councillor Doherty. Jacqueline, thank you. Are there any errors, omissions, or clarifications needed? I'm seeing sort of head shake a bit. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Let's move to the minutes of the 30th of July. Again, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Jacqueline? Councillor Holland, thank you. Again, any questions, clarifications, changes, additions? Okay, that being the case, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest in regard to anything coming before the meeting today? I'm seeing head shakes, so I'll take that as no, and we'll proceed to the real business. The first item on the agenda is delegations, and we have a delegation to make a presentation to us this afternoon. We're joined by Chris Semchuk. Chris is a resident of Kingston. And we have, Mr. Semchuk, we've seen correspondence from you on the subject. I think that just before I turn it over to you, I believe the process is that you are allotted 5 minutes to make your presentation. And then committee members will have the opportunity to ask Derek, I believe it's 2 questions.
Yes, I have 2 questions per committee member maximum.
Per committee member, yes. In regard to the delegation. So, Mr. Semchuk, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start my prepared statement, if somebody could give me a 4-minute warning, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Derek, could you do that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'm extremely emotional. I've done the best I can here. I have an emotional support person with me, and the slides are just for your reference purposes. I won't be speaking to the slides other than at some points in my statement. So I'm going to start when you're ready.
Anytime you're ready, Mr. Semchuk, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Semchuk. I'm a veteran injured with a post-traumatic stress injury. I've served all over the world in conflict zones and non-conflict zones. I was stationed in Rome, New York for 4 years as part of NORAD, as well as serving in Germany with NATO Airborne Warning and Control System for 3 years. I've lived and worked all over Canada. I am a proud Canadian. I am from Edmonton, Alberta, originally, and proud to have made Kingston my home. Politics ruins everything. This integrated care hub is not a political issue. However, out of the events of the current crisis we're living under, I feel that it is being politicized like so many other issues. It will get worse without community consultation, ethics, transparency, and accountability. First, at its core, this issue of the integrated care hub, homelessness, and housing issues in Kingston is an ethical dilemma that has been exacerbated by the historical inaction of the city on this file. For me personally, those issues came to light on fighting and helping organizations with the Capital Condos and the Ontario Municipality Board. Second, for myself personally, I found out about the integrated care hub and the vote on council, even though I am signed up on all city news sources and community engagements that I'm aware of for finding out local information. I found about this personally on the 12th of August from my neighbor who came out in the street saying to me, "Can you believe what's happening?" and explained about the care hub. Where was the community involvement? How was the transparency on consultation with Bell Park residents and the local residents of my community? Whether disabled, homeless, a tenant, landlord, landowner, Kingstonians have voices that need not only to be heard, but understood and acted on, because each of us holds wisdoms and lessons learned. Where's the public discussion and debate leading to reasonable, rational, and hopefully effectual compromises? My home is my sanctuary. I knew what my community was when I moved into it, and I love this community. But I fought for 20 years and I'm tired. My battle is with Veterans Affairs and the federal government. I've been trying to get help from a mayor of Kingston alumni for 3 years on my veterans file. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. I don't want to have to fight locally. However, on this issue, I had to speak out. I want to focus on living in Kingston in harmony with my local citizens and friends as a disabled veteran. So, in closing, I am hoping that someone, somewhere, somehow, there can be a better solution moving forward. And I am hoping that some brave citizen in this town can start possibly a tri-district community association of the like, incorporating maybe Kingstown, Inner Harbor, as well as Williamstown or others, to act as an advocate along with this committee for the tax-paying and not tax-paying citizens of all stripes when it comes to the integrated care hub. To have proper consultation and voices in the city and to be heard and understood to deal with homeless and housing in the future and moving forward. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Semchuk. Do members of the committee have questions for Mr. Semchuk? Melody.
Is he still here?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, okay, there you are. Sorry, I lost you in my grid. Okay. So can I just ask for a little bit of clarification? The care hub's in your community, like where you live, is that correct?
It is at one of the proposed locations of 342 Patrick Street, where the
Right.
Salvation Army is, yes.
Okay, and your frustration is that your neighborhood wasn't consulted about whether or not this location would be a good fit for the people who live there?
Correct, yes.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
As well, you know, I've talked to some of the like I walk through Bell Park, with my service dog. So I'm also quite skeptical that there was consultation. Just I explained it in my statement as far as consultations and stuff. Yeah, thanks for the question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. I know they're not easy to, it's not easy to present to a whole panel, and you know you're going to get questions. But I also want to thank you for your written submission. I just wonder if you could expand a little bit about what you feel are the biggest concerns here.
Well, I think they've been raised and focused on from the Bell Park folks, as well as what I'm saying today. And as far as 342 Patrick Street goes, and also one of the other sites for consideration for the temporary integrated care hub of, I think it's 660 Montreal Street. No matter where this site gets moved, citizens are going to have the not in my backyard concerns. And I'm really cautious to explain that no matter where this goes, that's going to be the problem. However, our neighborhood already has enough. And the issues of drug use, drug dens, needles, garbage, walk by Artillery Park Pool right now, and it's no slight to all the good that people are trying to do. But in my humble opinion, if there's not consultation and community members and everybody involved, it's going to continue to be a more pressing issue in the future too, with the potentials of what's going to happen with our economy as well. There's going to be more homeless and housing issues, unfortunately.
Thanks, Chris.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I think one thing that you brought to light, you know, in just mentioning not being able to engage with this process until sort of late in the game, where we're at now. So the shelter review that we're about to undertake will have more public engagement involved in it. And so I'm just wondering if you could maybe give us some thoughts on good practices for engagement from your perspective on some of these issues as we work towards other kinds of services and supports in the area.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Well, again, the transparency and the accountability. So whatever mechanisms the city has to get the consultations out in advance enough so it's not rushed and people can make their own determinations and do their own research and critical thinking around the issue. And so that also when the issue is being framed and the aims and the mission and the objectives around the solutions that are being presented are debated, that there's actually a debate and discussions and seeking to understand both sides from all players, whatever side of the issue you are on, to seek to understand and to come to that compromise that happens through debates and discussions without being shut down, being called names, etc. So whatever format that's going to take, and hopefully we can come up as a community with better solutions moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I believe Francesca has her hand raised and would like to ask a question.
Thank you. Francesca, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Francesca, you're unmuted now.
Yeah, just a general question. Will family services stay at that location? The Salvation Army Family Services, which I believe is still there.
I believe that's more a question towards staff than Mr. Semchuk. I don't believe he would necessarily have that information as a member of the public. So
Okay.
Perhaps we can save that question for the presentation coming up later from staff.
Okay, and I'd also like to say I agree. There is just too much concentration in Kingstown. It needs to be spread out a bit. God knows where, but okay.
Okay, Ted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make a comment. I actually used to live in a house right across from where the Salvation Army is on Patrick Street many, many years ago. And I know that there are issues around the homeless shelter at the corner of Montreal and Joseph Street. There's issues of drug use, prostitution. So that can certainly spill over the neighborhood. I think one thing we should look at is that we are starting to move out of that sort of North End attitude about affordable housing. Home-based housing is putting up a youth center on Princess and Albert Street. The city has taken over a building on Lower Union, which is being converted to right now a hostel for young people. And both Kingston Frontenac Housing and my agency, the Kingston Co-op, we're looking at putting over 100 affordable homes on Princess Street, right between Sir John A. and Portsmouth Avenue. So I think the attitude about shoving everything into the North End is starting to change, which is a good thing. And I can support your concern about not being consulted, because that's something that we should be doing, particularly in this time where we're having people living in tents in our city and there's not really a good alternative for them. So I certainly support you in your concern, and I hope that we are starting to move forward to a more progressive view of what we should be doing for our citizens. That's all I had to say.
Thanks, Ted. Jacqueline.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for your submission and thank you for your service. We appreciate it. I know that this was not easy for you, and it's so important to get involved exactly the way you've done. So thank you.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Semchuk from the committee? Okay. Mr. Semchuk, I want to thank you for first of all for coming forward and with the taking not only the time but putting the energy into this delegation and into your presentation. We appreciate it, and excuse me. Obviously, this is a significant issue for you. I'll say a couple of things. One, I think you've heard that your words have resonated with the committee. The other thing is that the city staff who are responsible for the integrated care hub and related policies are in attendance and have heard what you have to say. And the other thing that I will add is that it's my understanding that we're looking, we being the city is looking at a comprehensive review of the homelessness approach in the city of Kingston, and that would include things like the integrated care hub. So your comments on consultation are I think timely. This is an issue, sir, that where the decision-making authority rests with council, and we have two members of council on this committee, and if I can judge from their reactions, they've taken your presentation quite seriously. So. And I also understand that all of your correspondence has been or will be shared with council. And so I encourage you to continue to provide your feedback to members of council and your local council member as a good avenue to have your voice heard. And once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to raise your concerns with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me? Because I just have two things I'd like to say in closing, if that's all right.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That was very kind of you. First of all, I would like to thank Ted for his comments and highlight that again. I walk my dog through Bell Park. Before the crisis came down, I would interact with the homeless people camped out there quite frequently. And because he mentioned the tent people not having a say either. So I thank you for that, Ted, because I'd also like to highlight that two of the residents that were at Bell Park that got evicted are still living in tents. They've got good voices, and I'd like to give a shout out for Peter that's still fighting his fight, and highlight that Peter is very well spoken. He's homeless, he's disabled, and his voice needs to be heard as well. And hopefully these new consultations and moving forward will again come to solutions that are a better compromise and more workable for everybody in all the communities involved. So thanks for that, Ted. And then I'd like to just completely close and end my time with just addressing what the chair had said. Yes, I thank you for the staff being there and listening. Thanks for the staff doing their work. In the military, I was a staff officer on several occasions. It's the same sort of relationship. Staff makes, they're the experts, right? They're the subject matter experts, gather the information, put together recommendations, staff reports. I would just encourage all members of staff and council to remember that council are the elected officials and the ones that need to be held accountable. And please, elected officials and staff, remember your code of ethics, remember your code of responsibilities and conflict of interest moving forward. And please, council, remember, staff recommendations are staff recommendations. I'm not saying that they're right or they're wrong, but the buck stops with council members and their vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Semchuk. Okay, let's move on to other items in the agenda, and I think that as we pick up on some of the other items, we may well look back to what we've heard. There are no briefings, so business. We have a report on the overview of the current system and the review process. And I'm thinking that we're going to hear from Ruth on this one.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. So before I start, I just wanted to introduce my colleagues that are on the line as well. I think some of you've met in previous meetings. I have Joanne Boris and Kat Riley on the call with me, who are both working within the kind of homelessness services team. And I should say that they are the only two staff at the whole city of Kingston that are directly working in the homelessness system. And obviously they've been quite busy over the last couple of months. And in addition, I also have Melanie Bill on the call. Melanie is our financial analyst at Housing and Social Services. And I know the report that's on the agenda is addressing kind of a lot of the funding pieces in our current model. So if there are any specific financial questions, I definitely would depend on some of her input as well. To kind of introduce this report, I thought it would be good to actually first go back to the report that we brought forward to the special committee on July 30th, because I think it would be good to have a bit of an update on the different kind of components that we discussed at that report, at that meeting, because I think it will be helpful leading into the report that's before you right now. Just kind of checking in if everybody is okay with that before I start that kind of update.
Yeah, that's good, Ruth.
Great.
Yes, a good place to start.
Okay. Because I know it's only a month and a half ago, but definitely lots has happened in the past month and a half. So as you may recall, in that report, we gave you an update on kind of the three components that we are working in, starting with the homelessness services, second, the supportive housing services, and then third, the affordable housing projects that we're working on. And in each of those three areas, we provided you with some recommended initiatives. So I figured it would be good to just give you an update on those. So on the homelessness side, we obviously, and it's before you, we have started the process of the system review, and obviously today you will have an opportunity to ask any questions or clarifications and provide us with any thoughts on that, which is also outlined in the reports. Secondly, and kind of part of that obviously will also be to look at the kind of the social housing directives and the homelessness priorities. What obviously has been kind of a big kind of job over the last 6 weeks or so has been the rollout of both the pilots of the integrated care hub at Activity Park, and also the search for the permanent or more permanent location moving forward. So obviously, and I think you've all been reading a lot in the news around the integrated care hub, there has been quite, I think it's fair to say that this facility and the services it's providing has really provided a great service to the individuals that have accessed the integrated care hub. There have been people accessing that service that either were camping at Bell Park, but there's also many, many other clients that have been able to access this service. We've seen incredible numbers of clients using the facility to drop in, to get harm reduction supplies, to get a meal, to have a safe community to be, but also the resting area has been close to or at capacity for pretty much the last few weeks, and we've been adding additional beds and additional resting spaces as well. So I think it's fair to say that this service is really, I guess, responding to a bigger needs in our community. We're also seeing great partnerships with other community partners, such as addictions and mental health, housing supports, etc. And we're seeing some good results coming out of this initial pilot. We are also quite happy to see, and I know it's especially in this time with increased opioid overdoses and increased kind of challenges with for our community members with substance issues. With moving, again, part of the pilot, the consumption treatment services over to this pilot location, we've seen quite an increase of clients also accessing that service. Literally, this facility has saved lives over the last 6 weeks. So I think it's really exciting, and it's really clear that this is something we need to try to continue moving forward. What we, and kind of further to the delegation, in August, we brought a report to council to propose a few more permanent locations for the integrated care hub. Obviously, there were a few locations there, one being 342 Patrick Street, one being 661 Montreal Street. And again, in a very short time, we had to work through those pieces. The initial preference was the Patrick Street location, and I fully recognize the comments regarding engagement because, you know, in a normal situation, we would have more time to work through that. Actually, in the council reports are public now, but moving actually forward, our proposal is to actually look at or finalize the 661 Montreal Street location as the most preferred option, especially since this could accommodate both the CTS component and the drop-in investing component. So lots has happened on that side. Lots will happen. We also, and I think this is also been shared, we also will need some more time at Artillery Park to make sure that there will be a seamless transition of this service to the more permanent location. The other piece on this is the supportive or the kind of the current shelter supports pieces. So we continue to have the Kingston Youth Shelter at Lower Union on one of the 2 levels, and those 2 levels, as you might recall, are separated. So the 2 levels function as individual areas or individual kind of facilities. We also have still the overflow capacity at Lower Union, which has not been used as of now. And we continue to have shelter capacity at In From the Cold as well at home-based housing. So that's kind of an update. And I know that's the biggest update as well. On the supportive housing side, we will actually make the request for proposal for the Lower Union supportive housing public next week. We went to council to ask for basically a renovation budget for this facility, which council. And we also are working on the potential of acquiring a second building for supportive housing. We did receive a significant financial contribution from the province through the second phase of the social services kind of recovery funds. It was a $2.2 million budget. And we, again, have, I think we're quite grateful as a community that we can use some of that funding to continue the operating cost for the integrated care hub, but also look at potentially using some of that for some capital investments in some of these buildings that we want to develop for supportive housing. Obviously, those projects do not happen overnight, so there still will be some work that needs to be done on getting the appropriate proponents and kind of process in place for that. And then last but not least, the affordable housing piece. So we, next week, we're actually in council asking council for a significant municipal contribution to move forward on the 1316 Princess Street development. We are working with 2 proponents on that project, and obviously pending council's conversations, we're hopeful that we can move that forward. And we are in conversation with CMHC, the federal kind of the federal government on moving forward on a significant ask for the federal government to support us on that project as well. I think that's it on the updates. I hope that was clear. Just really real quick kind of on the actual report that's in front of you.
Okay. Ruth,
Right, go ahead.
before you get into that, just I'm thinking, does anyone have any questions of you on the update? Melody.
Hi, Ruth. Just a quick question about when you said talking to council about seeking municipal funding for affordable housing. What is the plan? What is your hoped outcome for that money?
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the question, Melody. This is specifically for 1316 Princess Street, which has been part of council's priorities to develop 90 affordable units at that property. Council actually allocated there's a budget of up to $18 million to develop 90 affordable housing units. Our hope is to go to council with a municipal contribution combined with also, allowing the 2 proponents to go ahead with the various kind of steps in the process to make that development possible. So obviously our hope is to deliver on additional affordable housing units with a range of affordability. So we're looking at a portion of the 90 to be 60% average market rent, which is quite a deep subsidy, a portion of it being 80%, and there also will be some RGI units in the development. So the hope is to, well, not only to deliver on council's priority, but actually I think if obviously there are still some steps to take, and this is typically a process that takes a while, and it's a back and forth between different levels of government as well to see how they are able to support. But ultimately this will kind of add, across the continuum, this would add actual affordable housing units. And, obviously depending the definition that you use, at least adding to the portfolio of our housing across the board. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I should say, I should say that this is obviously pending council's approval, but it's kind of in line with the process that we've been following.
Okay, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ruth. So I guess, okay, well, I don't know about other people on the committee, but along with shelter services and homelessness, we are hearing a lot more these days about RGI units and affordable housing. And so I guess the project that you mentioned, and I know there are a few others in the works, and those projects include the removal of the restoration, essentially, or reintroduction of RGI units from Rideau Heights area. Is that correct? First of all.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. We have, and I do apologize, I don't have all the numbers here in front of me, but from kind of memory, we had the building in Rideau Heights, the Daly Street building, I believe had 30 units that were demolition. We have already replaced those 30 by adding 10 on Brock Street, 10 on 7 Right, and 10 on Cliff, I think, or Curtis. I should double check, fact check this to be honest, but so we kind of continue to, what we do know, and I know this is a bigger conversation, is that we are also looking at the end of mortgages of various social housing providers. So we just need to continue to maintain a healthy RGI amount in our community. As you know, we're also looking at the portable housing benefits and other ways of kind of maintaining that healthy, kind of amount of the mandated kind of 2003 units in our community. But it's not to make up still for my understanding, but I will double check and get back to you if it's different. But we have replaced the actual bricks and mortar that was moved out of. However, and sorry, just to end that, if we're adding 10 RGI units, we would also have that opportunity to look at kind of flipping those RGI units in Rideau Heights to market units. So there's always that kind of, we can always look at that mix moving forward. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'll follow up by email because some of the stuff to do with the Rideau Heights regeneration is becoming more topical now that there's more work happening. Like we actually are in a different phase there now with construction. So I'll follow up with you on that one. But on the issue of the like grand total of RGI units, I guess the question is, without significant provincial or federal funding, are we going to just continue to hold steady at 2003, or will we be able to increase much beyond that?
Thank you for that question, and through you, Mr. Chair. So two things. First of all, absolutely for Rideau Heights, there's a road construction starting, which is really helpful in kind of getting some of these blocks accessible and move these pieces forward. And we are obviously having those conversations internally as well. And happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. As for the grand total of RGI, we can, as a service manager, we technically can do what we want, and we can surpass the 2003 units. The one thing obviously to keep in mind is that RGI units are in the kind of bricks and mortar form are quite expensive. So that's why, for instance, portable housing benefits has shown to be a more affordable way of providing people with a deep RGI kind of subsidy. Might be, another kind of way to continue to increase units above and beyond the 2003. But again, I think the challenge at this point is if you make that change, you need to continue to support that moving forward and it's a financial commitment. So it also is kind of, again, connected to the bigger, so like community renewal strategy in social housing that is currently happening. The province will, we anticipate in the next few years that there will be some new, or maybe some more opportunities to be a little bit more flexible as a service manager as well. But there's much more to it. And I'm sure that we'll come back to this meeting at some point as well.
Thanks.
Before I get to Ted, Jacqueline, did you have your hand up? Okay, Ted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make a comment. The Kingston Co-op is hoping to participate in the project at 1316 Princess Street. What we're putting in 38 units, all of which will be affordable either at the 80% or the 60% as requested by the city. One other thing that we do is we have 3 and 4 bedroom units in our existing facility, many of which now have an older couple living in them. So what we're hoping to do is encourage some movement from those larger units into the new units we're creating, thereby freeing up 2, 3, 4 bedroom units for families that desperately need good accommodation. And as you know, in Kingston, the larger the number of bedrooms you have in your house, the more Queen students you can jam into it at a huge rent. And everything in the co-op is classed as affordable. So we're hoping to be able to make a significant contribution to what's needed in the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ruth, do you want to go forward with the rest of your report?
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely, I will. So obviously, kind of with that long introduction, and I do apologize, but it's a quite I would say exciting portfolio right now. We prepared for you as kind of requested in a couple of different meetings, and also to give you some understanding of the current system, a report that is obviously providing you with an overview of the current homelessness system as it's funded right now, and also the process of the review. And it is an information report, but I hope you know that if there's any questions and other pieces that you will, I mean, obviously I invite you to ask away. So the first component of the report obviously is kind of summarizing our current system, and as we've kind of identified, this system has originated, or is really kind of originated from the initial kind of housing and homelessness, 10-year housing and homelessness plan, and kind of the homelessness plan that was developed in 2013, 2014. So this was set in place and introduced in 2015. And as we all know, especially over the last 6 months or so, there is some room for improvement, and there's an opportunity to make some changes. Again, I will not go into all the details, but we just identified all the different components of the current system, kind of gave you an update on capacity and utilization of the shelter. I know we touched on that on the July 30th meeting as well. And we have highlighted, we've provided you with an overview of the funding allocations of the funded partners. So, you know, obviously I'm happy to answer any questions there. Then as a second component of this report, we provided you with the overview of the system review that we are embarking on, and kind of obviously will be our main focus for the fall. We've obviously identified what our guidelines, or we would like to see as guidelines in this review, what areas we would like to review. And again, that's obviously mainly our existing funded areas in the system, but it's also adding obviously the new integrated care hub, the homelessness priority on the social housing waitlist. And we also really think it's important to look at the whole system and in connection with other services in the community. So really, I think the main goal that we've identified for this is to ultimately assist in developing an integrated system of care where we can really see a seamless collaboration and partnership between housing, health, and social services as being a key to client success. I know homelessness is a term that has a lot of different, you know, kind of feelings and interpretations attached to it, but ultimately the goal is, I think the goal is quite powerful, because that is really what we're trying to achieve as a community. We have spent some time in the report as well to give you an understanding of how we would like to, or who we would like to work with. And again, front and center should be the clients. And I think we just heard that from the delegation as well. we're seeing some great examples of, again, like the work that the Integrated Care Hub staff are doing with clients, and how clients' voices are used to actually create the services. So that will be one of our key focus points. We will, in the next week or so, would like to establish a community advisory group and obviously invite members of the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee that are interested to let us know if they would be interested in joining that group. We also will be reaching out to members of the United Way Community Advisory Board, and we will be reaching out to partner agencies. And ultimately, we obviously will also be speaking to our existing service providers and service providers that are maybe not funded by us directly, but are providing significant services to the vulnerable population. So, and then we identified the kind of the proposed timeline for this process. We're obviously in September, so kind of really trying to ramp this up. And I think an important piece that I would like to highlight to you is that we are hoping, if you're willing and able to schedule another special meeting of this committee by the end, probably mid to end October, to present initial findings and also to talk through some pieces that we've been kind of hearing and some ideas on how we would like to move forward. I mean, we are committed to bring basically the outcome back to this committee in December. I know it's pretty ambitious, but I think the reality is that we would really like to use this opportunity to create a new kind of framework for the system, and also paired with that have a request for proposal ready to go in 2021. So we would have enough time to rework kind of the components that we identified that might need some change. I could talk about this probably for 10 more minutes, but I probably assume there are some questions or clarifications. So I would definitely welcome your input. And I'm just also, again, sharing that my colleagues on the call are happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. I'd like, first of all, I'd like to suggest in terms of Ruth's invitation, if as a committee member you're interested in participating in a community advisory group, probably the best approach would be to indicate that interest to Ruth, and she'll take it from there. You know, and I think Ruth will have to get out to and maybe Derek, we could get you to look at, after, seeing as you have the email list, people who aren't here, who aren't able to be here today. If maybe you could flag Ruth's offer to them and indicate if they have an interest, that they too have the opportunity to get a hold of Ruth. And
I can do that, Mr. Chair.
And interest or indicate that. Okay, questions about the review? Councillor Doherty.
Okay, I needed to get back to my report. So thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ruth, for the report, and to all the staff who put it together. I do have a whole bunch of questions, so I'll only ask 3 to give other people a chance to ask questions too. But on page 7, you mentioned that in the shelter system, that right now we have about 550 individuals. Of those, 132 were out of the service manager service area. And so I just wonder, because these 132 people, they are still in Kingston. They are living here. They may be outside of our service manager area, but they are accessing our shelters or maybe even living on our streets or living in the rough. So I just wonder if we can, do we have some information regarding how much homelessness actually costs our community? Like how much does it cost? When we don't give shelter, or when we're reluctant, to give shelter for people who live outside of our area, and how much do overdoses cost? Like, what is the cost to community? I think in a sense, when I read that, we talk about the cost of how much it costs to house them, but how much does it cost not housing them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I will start, and I will definitely see if Joanne has something to add to that. I think it's an excellent question. I would obviously not have a number, but I can only assume that the cost of homelessness is quite significantly is quite high, depending obviously on the individual situation, but it's accessing, for instance, very expensive services such as the emergency room, hospital, potentially, and again, not making any assumptions here, but potentially any justice or police services. I'm gonna see if Joanne has anything to add. I think through some of the homelessness agencies kind of federally and provincially that we work with, they might have done some work and some studies on it, but I think it's a really good question to take with us and keep in mind if we're kind of doing our bigger review as well.
Thank you, Ruth. This is Joanne. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Joanne.
Wonderful. So to that point, in speaking with, just as an example that really helped me understand sort of the cost effectiveness of ensuring that individuals who are safe and have a roof over their head, and especially for those who have mental health addictions and challenges and those who might be substance users, as a brief example, and this varies province to province, but on average, an overdose of an individual who might be taking an opioid type of substance can cost anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000. And that's just to revive that individual if they fall through the regular medical process. So calling EMS, getting them to an emergency room, having them restabilized, having them checked, all of those different pieces. The CTS, as an example, that we have at our integrated care hub has actually and literally saved approximately 5 individuals' lives without them having to go to the hospital. They were cared for by EMS, they were cared for by nurses on staff, and the individuals working at the CTS who are highly trained in dealing with overdoses and reversing those. So those right there shows the massive impact that one program can have, let alone when you combine a number of programs to ensure that holistically you're supporting the individuals that require that, so that you're ensuring that they eat healthy, you're ensuring they have a safe place to sleep, you're ensuring that if there does have to be some type of other community intervention, you're bringing that to them instead of potentially losing them through the system and them not being able to access the services and supports that they require. So, it certainly is one of the things that we're really going to be keeping a really close look on is what is the cost effectiveness and the balance of this type of integrated care hub model? What does that look like for us as we progress down this pathway? How many lives, again, a life is priceless. So how many lives are we actually saving? How many individuals are we ensuring are stabilized also, again, so that they may not just be housed and then back through the system because potentially there was inadequate support so they weren't ready for housing. That can cost thousands of dollars as well to rehouse someone, bring them back to shelter, go through all of those processes. This department doesn't necessarily come at it from the dollars and cents. That's not my role to look at that, but the reality is that I do believe that there's a massive impact. We have individuals who look at that monetary side for us, of course, but there's a massive impact on the individuals who are being served.
Okay. I've got Melody and then Jacqueline. Melody.
Hi. I just want to add to that. Councillor Doherty, I know that there's data from 2013 on the Homeless Hub website. It is Canadian data that actually breaks down the cost of a shelter bed, a jail cell, a hospital bed, rental supplement, and social housing. And it'll tell you for an individual, if they are to spend one entire month in one of those places, what the cost difference would be. It's 7 years out of date, but it does kind of give you an idea of the difference. So yeah, anyways, I just wanted to say it's out there.
Thanks, Melody. Jacqueline.
Thank you. I was just going to add as well, those are like the immediate costs, but there are so many long-term costs. So particularly children, when we're able to house children, the trajectory for life completely changes, education, community involvement, their future completely changes, and there are many cost advantages there with setting people up on the right path. So there are many long-term advantages beyond just beyond the short-term costs associated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, are there other questions? Councillor Doherty, you said you had three, you were going to ask three. I heard one.
Thanks, I just don't want to take over. Okay, so my next question was about the integrated hub system, hub pilot project. So now council is going to be asked if we approve the Montreal location, and we did hear the presentation about concerns and the lack of consultation, but it is important that we do recognize that a lot had to happen fast because of the pandemic. So there were reasons why we didn't consult as much as we should have. And I am glad to see in the report that that is going to be rectified. But going back to the Montreal location, I just want to double check. Is this still going to be a pilot? Is that going to be temporary? Because there's also an extension now with the Artillery Park location, but are we talking temporary or are we talking long-term?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for that question. So at this point, as council has approved also some operating dollars for this model until July next year, I would say there's two things. We, again, based on this initial 6 to 8 week kind of timeline and what we're seeing, we're convinced that this is probably going to be a permanent option. You can probably sense our excitement and our kind of experience so far with this model, while there's still so much to work on through as well. The reality though is, and I know we've spoke to council about this also with CAO Hurdle, we do also need to secure more longer term dollars for this that is not just municipal or Chippy specific. So as much as we are committed to have this as a permanent long-term option in the system, we need to work through not only this system review, because we need to make sure that we have all of those pieces together. We also need to work on more secure long-term funding. We're definitely seeing an opportunity to look at our existing municipal, or I would say Chippy, the dollars, so the community homeless improvement dollars that we are receiving from the province, and we probably have the opportunity to redirect some of that on a more longer term. But we also need to have, and we are have conversations with other funders, such as, for instance, the Ministry of Health, and we are having those conversations. So that's a very long answer to say, yes, we're committed to have this as a long-term permanent option. We just need some time to align all the pieces to make that happen.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Before Councillor Doherty asks her next question, does anybody have a question that you'd like to get in between them? Seeing none, go ahead, Bridget.
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I did go to the Integrated Hub yesterday, and I had a great conversation with the staff there, and I have to say it really is impressive what they're accomplishing. And we have known for many years that there are many people falling through the cracks. So it's really fantastic that the agencies are coming together more and working together and really offering a model that's obviously effective. So I guess in the housing review, and I remember when the housing first model came out, a lot of people questioned the shortfalls. They were a bit skeptical because there were some missing. The support for people was missing in the housing first model. So it'll be interesting how we move forward and how that may affect the housing first model that we have embraced so much in 2015. So I guess maybe that's a question. So there's so many things floating in my mind, but the Integrated Hub in this Montreal location, obviously, from what we heard earlier, there may be concerns regarding this location. And of course, the homelessness isn't just in the center of the city, it's in other locations of the city. But when I did speak with staff yesterday, they really stressed that meeting people where they are is really important. And so I guess the question is, this Montreal location, is that the only option that we're thinking of at the moment? And how is the community consultation is going to happen if we're trying to move pretty quickly on this?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I think there's two components to your question. So first, the housing first and model and services, and also kind of the other components of the whole shelter system. And I will definitely look at Joanne to add to this. I think what we are seeing is that, again, there is not and I feel like I'm saying this quite often, but there's not a one size fits all. I think we will continue to need different services, including, for instance, a family shelter or family, kind of emergency, solutions, youth, women, probably, other specific populations. So I don't think the Integrated Care Hub is the only piece in the system. It's obviously also new, so we're still working through kind of that component. And looking at how that ultimately fits with the existing services, and if the existing services need to be changed or realigned. And that's exactly what we need this review for, and hear from clients and providers and members of the public. The housing first kind of ideology, we still believe that is a very important component of the system. I believe there's some numbers in the reports, but it's definitely served a really great purpose for many individuals in our community. But what we're also seeing is that it's not necessarily the right approach for everybody. And again, that kind of the delegation that Gilles Charette, the ED from HERS provided last week to council, I think was pretty powerful. I think some individuals, and again, we need to also hear that from clients, really need some initial support to stabilize before they might even be able to think about housing. And we also know that we have clients that have been housed, but we're not able to maintain that housing. So I think it's really that combination again of the different components and how they work together in the system. So that's, I think, so we're not putting housing first aside. We believe that that's still important, but we also need to look at how that fits with other pieces that clearly were not available at this point. On the engagement side, I wish I could say, I mean, I think based on the delegation, I can 100% appreciate the frustration and the kind of surprise that happens with the search for the permanent location. Obviously there was really a few days of kind of decision making. So there was not time to have any engagement happen at that point. For kind of the more permanent location, we definitely are working on with our colleagues at communications on a NHARS and KCHC on doing a good kind of public engagement process, obviously given the limited time that we have. I know also as part of kind of the move of the CTS component, it's even a recommendation to have proper and public engagements. But I recognize that is going to be, and it's not going to be an easy task. It's something that we'll have to work through and really kind of be mindful of the, I would say, delicacy of this project.
Thanks.
Melody.
I have two questions. My first is I heard Ruth, I heard you say looking at putting back in place homelessness as a qualifier to get expedited into social housing. Is that did I hear you correctly?
Yes, I said, you heard me correctly. We haven't decided that we aren't doing it. We just want to explore kind of the pros and cons of doing that. Again, across the province, there's a bit of a mixed bag of service managers that have put that, have that as a priority and service managers that haven't. We obviously also through the Housing First model had other ways of supporting people with finding housing through some additional supplements. So we haven't, it will be part of the review to see if that would be something we want to. We used to have that on our social housing wait list. And because of and my understanding, and I believe this was the rationale, but because of the introduction of the Housing First model, that priority was removed. But again, just like this is all connected, we need to look at that as well and have that conversation.
So anecdotally, when I went to put myself on the social housing list, when I went through my own crisis back in 2015, I was just rejected and nobody told me about a Housing First program. So one doesn't replace the other if people aren't being redirected to what the new solution is supposed to be. Just for you to know that people aren't necessarily, yeah, sorry. It's a little frustrating for me to hear it. It makes me feel flustered to hear that there was something else that was supposed to have supported in that time and I didn't know it existed, so.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I couldn't comment on what happened in 2015 when you had that interaction, but it's definitely appreciate that feedback, and I will definitely look at kind of what happened, or I will look at kind of that timeline. I mean, again, I can only assume, so that's good to hear, and I appreciate that.
I do have one more question, if I can.
Sure.
Peter, is that okay? One more question, just with COVID going on and like unemployment rates going down and, you know, some parents choosing to homeschool, and we're all just sort of, a lot of people anyways, are sort of, their deck was reshuffled from what they thought it was going to be at this point in time. Are you at all concerned that the volume of people who are going to need to lean into affordable housing is going to suddenly increase in the coming months, or are you remaining optimistic that that our economy is going to swing back and we'll all hop back on soon? Just sort of wondering what if there's any planning in place for that.
Thank you, and to you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate you raising that, but it's because it's absolutely something that we are concerned about, and we're trying to plan ahead for that as well. There are kind of two components to that. First, you know, our current social and affordable housing kind of stock, we have a good handle on understanding current kind of status of, for instance, arrears. So we kind of know where we are both on the rent and the utilities side. So we're kind of monitoring that, and it has increased slightly, manageable, but we're kind of prepared for that. On the private market side, and actually I did have a good conversation with Jacqueline on this as well. We're also trying to make sure that we are as aware as possible of understanding potential arrears, both on the rent side, but also potentially on the utility side. And we do have, as you might have seen in the report, we have both the discretionary benefits and homelessness prevention fund to help people with any, if they're at risk of eviction. So we're trying to understand the numbers and making sure that we have enough kind of budget in place to support people. So that's only on the actual current status. I mean, absolutely, Melody, I think we're all concerned about what's happening, and it's hard to really grasp how many people might need more affordable housing or may need to move because of their change of employment status. We'll kind of continue to try to do our best to make those estimates and see what the trends are, but at least I feel like we have a fairly robust potential plan that we can roll out for those that are currently in a situation where they have challenges paying the rent. Obviously, it's not as black and white. I mean, there will be different scenarios, but we are trying to think ahead and see what happens. And I think it will be especially when for instance, the various benefits are running out, such as CERB and others. And obviously, we also need to understand how kind of social assistance and ODS across the board will look like moving forward, as there's also a lot of change on that portfolio. So I really appreciate you pointing that out, because it's absolutely something that we should be looking at as a community and plan for.
Thanks.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Doherty, do you have another one? I don't mean to pick on you.
No, that's okay. I do. In the report, I forget what page it's on, but you mentioned that, anyhow, you mentioned that there is support for landlords who offer housing. And I wonder if you could expand on that, because I did hear from some landlords that they had concerns with some tenants who kept destroying their property, and they felt a bit frustrated with the city. So are we going to take a look at that as well, and in our review, and also speak with landlords who are working with the city and trying to house people?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So yes, that's the damage funds that you're probably referring to. So we do have a budget in place for those landlords that are housing people through kind of the Housing First program. You know, there are some requirements for instance, the damage, the damages. So we do kind of request that landlords are providing us with some a couple of quotes and getting us the information. I probably will also refer to Joanne to kind of speak to kind of the broader piece. I mean, I think it's a really great suggestion, obviously, to make sure that we talk to landlords, I think, across the board, especially given the current lower vacancy rates and not really that incentive for landlords to participate. I think definitely kind of looking at the process, but also looking at, you know, how can we entice landlords to participate. I mean, I'm going to be very transparent and honest. It is a really hard, you know, sell kind of based on the current climate that we're in, but especially for landlords, if they have that ability to rent out to, you know, other tenants. But doesn't mean that we should be creative and think outside of the box to try to see how we can support landlords. And I'm happy to move it to Joanne and see if she has anything to add to this.
Yeah, at the current moment, we don't have a lot of interaction with landlords from our level. That is something that the Housing First program managers actually are responsible for, is going out and being able to, for lack of a better term, sell the program and try and match clients with the appropriate type of housing if there's individuals interested. We have absolutely seen a significant decrease in individuals who are interested in renting to some of our clients, especially during COVID and potentially as a result of some Bell Park pieces. But ultimately, back to your earlier question, Councillor Doherty, is that, you know, the Housing First program has been a fantastic success, and I really don't want to lose sight of that within the city of Kingston. It's housed hundreds of individuals who are currently still housed and thriving in their apartments, rooms, homes, wherever they might be, and some are able to still reach out for support. So I feel very comfortable that for a very large number of residents of this community, they have been helped by that Housing First program and the landlords who have stepped up. Further to Ruth's point, we definitely, through likely our service providers and potentially having a forum for individuals who might be interested in providing rooms for clients and discussing some of the advantages in doing so, it certainly is a priority of ours. We do have a very short period of time to go through, so what precedence that will take, I'm not entirely sure, and it's certainly something that as a team we're discussing. And we really are working with service providers to try and ensure that when a landlord does have a difficult situation with a client, that we are able to assist them in rectifying that, and at least putting their apartment back to the way it was prior to having had a client who might have caused damages there. So I hope that helps answer your question, but we do recognize that landlords are a very big part of our Housing First program. We do desperately need more, and so it's something that we're going to be looking at working at as a system.
Okay. Are there other questions? Councillor Doherty.
Sorry, just have one more question. And you know, Ruth and Joanne, it's okay if you don't have an answer to this, but it's something that Ted actually raised. We have a lot of construction going on at the moment, and we do have a low vacancy rate, but I'm just wondering how many new units are going to go online in the next 12 months, and whether that vacancy rate is going to be changing, and perhaps the pandemic will change it too, and therefore opening more units perhaps for people to move in. Therefore, we need a good relationship with landlords too. Perhaps you have a bit of information there.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have an answer, but I definitely have some thoughts that I can share on that. Because I think you're making another really good point that we, you know, as you were part, I think, as well, and you were part of the mayor's the task force on housing as well. I think we know that the conversations were on how do we get as much construction and as many units on the market across the continuum. I think it's going to be really interesting to look at numbers, and I know we were actually just making the inquiry with CMHC on when we could expect our vacancy rate data and our average market rents, because I think those are really crucial numbers, especially in this time, to see like, maybe the market has changed so significantly that we may see some shifts in how in our needs moving forward. At this point, that's really only speculating. And I think we definitely need to put some thoughts in, you know, how can we look at some scenarios maybe moving forward on how much do we have in the pipeline? Are the needs still going to be similar? What is going to be the impact of post-secondary moving forward? I think all those components, again, are so crucial in the kind of conversation. And it also probably further to Melody's point on kind of just the needs of families and individuals based on maybe their changed income. So I think, again, don't have an answer, but it's definitely something that we need to take back as a city, I think, and look at in a more broader context.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks.
Are there other questions? Hearing none, just maybe to wrap this part up, if I can make a couple of comments. I think that I remember back to, I'm not sure if it was the July meeting or one before, or anyway, a comment that Ruth made that that notwithstanding the good work we've done with Housing First, and Joanne talked about the good work, and we have indeed made progress since we started on this journey. COVID-19 seems to have shown I think Ruth's point was that COVID-19 is showing us the soft spots in the system and areas that we need to do more. And I'm delighted that we're embarking on this review. I think it'll do nothing but strengthen our system, Ruth. So thank you for that. One comment I do have on the timeline, and I'm thinking back to our delegation, and I know it's a really tight, ambitious timeline. However, I would hope that if there needs to be a little slippage on it, that we're flexible on that. I'm not talking about taking 2 or 3 years to finish this, but if we need a few more weeks, I hope that you're flexible on that rather than being slave to the timeline, because I think that obviously we want to get this right, or as right as we can, because I don't know that we'll ever get stuff perfect. So just that comment, and thank you to you and your staff for all the great work you've done on this review, and on the materials that you've been able to give us, and what you're doing to help the community. So our appreciation. Okay, let's move on. This was a report for information purposes only, so there's no recommendation.
Mr. Chair, my apologies, sure. But Mr. Semchuk is still in the meeting as a member of the public, so technically we should see if any members of the public wish to comment on the report, if that's okay by you.
Absolutely.
All right, so
sorry, I didn't realize he was still here.
That's fair enough. I didn't tell you either, so no worries. If any member of the public wishes to speak, we ask that they use the raise hand function in Zoom. So that is accessed by clicking the participants tab on the bottom of the screen. That will open up a window on the right, and there should be a button there that says raise hand. We'll just provide 10-15 seconds to see if Mr. Semchuk wishes to speak. And I'm not seeing anything, Mr. Chair, so we can carry on then.
Okay, great. There are no motions or notices of motion that I am aware of. So moving on to other business, I think we have a loose end and I don't think Francesca got an answer to her question that she asked during Mr. Semchuk's delegation about whether or not family services would continue at Patrick Street. So just to try and complete that loop, Ruth, would you or any of the staff members have an idea to how that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for keeping us organized on that. So as we are currently looking at a different location, Salvation Army would obviously continue their services out of the 342 Patrick Street location. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other business? Jackie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take a moment, if I may, just to pay respects to the friends and family of Terry Fleming. I believe she was a past member of this advisory committee and a gem here in the city of Kingston who dedicated so much of her life to the community and bettering it in so many ways, particularly with a focus on housing and homelessness. So my respects to them at this time.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Yes, Terry was a member of the committee and worked for many years in this. Derek, I believe we have two items of correspondence.
That's correct. And Mr. Chair, did you want to briefly take this time to mention to the committee that there will be a change in the clerk for this committee as well?
I was going to do that just before the date and time of the next meeting.
All right, well, I'll leave it to you then, Mr. Chair. We have, I've got to find, we have two pieces of correspondence we've received. One from Philip R.A. Hooker, Mills and Mills LLP regarding the Care Hub in Kingstown District, and the other from Melody Rook, again regarding the Integrated Care Hub on Patrick Street. Given the discussion, I'm not sure that is there anything else that we want to do with this other than receive them for information? And Derek, I'm assuming that these will be passed on to council. That is correct.
Okay. All right. Then let's move on to the date and time of the next meeting. And actually, before we get there, as Derek said, we unfortunately are losing him. Derek is going on to a position with policy and bylaw, and given the events of the last few days in the waterfront area, Derek, I'm sure that will be an interesting place to be for a while. But I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to thank you for all of the work you've done over the last, I'm going to say, couple of years. I've certainly, as chair, enjoyed working with you, and as I say, I want to thank you for the work that you've done, and I want to wish you all the best in your new position. I wish you success. That's the best moniker, the best measure of going forward. And I'd also like to welcome Elizabeth Fawcett. Elizabeth is, I understand, fairly new with the clerk's department, and will be taking over the responsibilities as clerk of this committee. So Elizabeth, welcome, and I'm sure we all look forward to working with you. In terms of the next meeting, the next scheduled meeting is the 10th of December. However, as Ruth said, we can expect that staff may be wanting to get our views on a number of things between now and then. So it's quite likely that there will be as Ruth indicated, a special meeting sometime around the end of October, and we will get more information out on that as it comes available. That being the end of our agenda, could I entertain a motion to adjourn? Jackie, Ted, all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.